There is a moment on America's Got Talent that television rarely produces, a moment where even Simon Cowell, the man famous for his iron composure and razor-sharp indifference, is visibly shaken. That moment belonged to Courtney Hadwin. A 13-year-old girl from a quiet mining village in northeast England walked onto one of the world's biggest stages looking nervous, small, and out of place. Then she opened her mouth, and the world changed. What followed was one of the most remarkable, complicated, and ultimately inspiring stories in modern music, a journey that took a child from a school lunchtime open mic to Carnegie Hall, with years of struggle, silence, and self-discovery in between. Courtney Hadwin was born on July 6, 2004, and grew up in Heselden, a small former mining village near Hartlepool in County Durham, in the northeast of England. She was raised by her parents, Paul and Anne-Marie, alongside her younger siblings. Like many naturally gifted singers, music found Courtney early. She sang at home as a young child, later dabbling in musical theater before discovering the raw power of her own voice through covers and personal expression. The spark that truly ignited her ambition came when she watched Connie Talbot perform on Britain's Got Talent. That moment planted a seed. By around the age of 9 or 10, Courtney began singing seriously, and by 11, while attending Heselden Primary School, she performed at a lunchtime open mic singing "Say Something" by A Great Big World and Christina Aguilera. A video of that performance was uploaded to Facebook and quickly went viral within the local community. Classmates were stunned. Teachers were moved. And the message from everyone around her was unanimous: she had something extraordinary. Encouraged by that response, Courtney threw herself into developing her talent. Her grandfather later recalled how she took to busking in local spaces to help cover the cost of singing lessons and family travel expenses. She studied at multiple local academies, including Shotton Hall Theatre School, Peanuts Master Classes, Kate Sear's School of Music, and Vocal Ovation by Julie Miles. Each lesson sharpened a voice that was already doing things no child her age should have been capable of. Her first notable competition came in 2015 when she appeared at Teenstar UK in Newcastle, reaching the grand final with a rendition of Bob Dylan's "Make You Feel My Love." Recognition followed quickly. The next year, she won Hartlepool's Performer of the Year award and became a finalist in the Beyond the Light ceremony. She auditioned for Open Mic UK, performed a stunning version of "Nothing Compares to You," and then, in a milestone that signaled she was no ordinary local act, opened for Sister Sledge at the South Tyneside Festival in front of over 18,000 people. In 2017, Courtney auditioned for The Voice Kids UK with a fiery rendition of Tina Turner's "Nutbush City Limits," earning a place on Danny Jones's team. She fought through the battle round, reached the semi-final performing James Brown's "I Got You, I Feel Good," and concluded with a show-stopping performance of "And I Am Telling You I'm Not Going," finishing as a finalist. Through every stage of that competition, it became increasingly obvious that Courtney Hadwin was not simply a talented kid. She was a generational force. Her family stood behind her at every step. Her mother recognized her raw potential from the beginning, while her father took on extra work, including delivering pizzas, to help fund travel to auditions and performances across the north of England. When Courtney eventually appeared on America's Got Talent, her family moved to Los Angeles to support her, with her father traveling back and forth so she could continue her schooling while competing. Through every whirlwind of television appearances and record deals, her family remained her foundation, keeping her grounded and reminding her of where she came from. By early 2018, Courtney had built enough of a reputation that she was personally sought out by producers for season 13 of America's Got Talent. At just 13, she stepped onto that iconic stage looking like the shy schoolgirl she was, quiet, a little awkward, far from what anyone would associate with star power. Then, "Hard to Handle," by Otis Redding began to play, and within seconds, the shy girl was gone. What replaced her was something raw and ancient. A voice that sounded as though it had lived through decades of heartbreak and joy, pouring out of a teenager who hadn't yet finished middle school. The audience erupted. The judges leaned forward. And Simon Cowell, the man who claims he never cries, sat rigid with shock, his poker face cracking as he searched for words. When he found them, they were simple and true. You were this shy little thing when you came out. You sing, and you're like a lion. Howie Mandel didn't hesitate. He slammed the golden buzzer, sending Courtney directly to the live shows. He declared that her voice belonged to a whole different era, and compared her to Janis Joplin, one of the greatest blues rock vocalists who ever lived. Within hours, the audition video spread around the world. By the time Tyra Banks introduced her during later episodes, it had been viewed over 310 million times. Courtney advanced through the quarterfinals and semi-finals with electric performances, each one blurring the line between child performer and seasoned soul artist. She ultimately placed 6th overall, a result that surprised many who had predicted she would win, but the competition had already done what it needed to do. It introduced her to the world. It gave her a global platform. And it placed her directly in the sights of Simon Cowell's label, Psycho Music. Shortly after the 2018 live shows ended, Simon signed Courtney to Psycho Music in partnership with Arista Records. At just 14 years old, she stood at the threshold of everything she had worked toward. In interviews at the time, she described it as a dream come true, thrilled at the prospect of recording original music and staying true to herself. She had no way of knowing what was coming. The machine moved fast. Fame arrived overnight. Her audition played on talk shows and news segments across the globe. Headlines called her the next Janis Joplin, the British soul sensation, and the 13-year-old who sang like a legend. She became a household name in America and a rising star back home in the UK. But behind the headlines and the adoration, the reality was far more complicated. Studio sessions began immediately, with songwriting teams, producers, and industry managers all steering her toward a polished pop-soul crossover sound. Courtney, still a teenager still learning who she was as both an artist and a person, found herself in a system built entirely for adults. Back-to-back recording sessions, promotional appearances, media obligations, and transatlantic travel quickly consumed her life. A typical day might start with breakfast in the UK, meetings with label executives by noon, and a long-haul flight to a US studio by evening. The creative pressure was relentless and deeply personal. She later reflected that, everyone around me was telling me who I should be, describing countless writing sessions where she was pushed toward themes and sounds she didn't connect with. The comparisons to Janis Joplin, flattering as they were, had become a kind of cage, an expectation she was being shaped to fulfill rather than an inspiration she could grow into organically. She was still finding her voice, both literally and artistically, yet she was being asked to deliver a defined, radio-ready product on a tight schedule. Mental exhaustion followed. She described moments of overwhelming pressure, closing every live show, carrying the energy of the finale, holding herself together while missing home and feeling isolated in a world of business suits and boardroom decisions. The social media posts began to slow. Her presence in mainstream media gradually shrank. Fans grew worried, and speculation began to fill the silence. Where had Courtney gone? The truth was simpler and sadder than most imagined. She had not disappeared. She had retreated, stepping back to breathe, to reclaim a sense of self that had been slowly eroded by the demands of an industry that had taken her childhood talent and turned it into a commercial product. The relationship between Courtney and Simon Cowell faded the way many industry relationships do, not with a dramatic falling out, but with the quiet drift of business moving forward. Simon had spotted her, signed her, and then, as was the nature of his role, moved on to the next season and the next talent. He was never a personal mentor. He was a gatekeeper, and once the gates opened, the machine took over without him. Courtney never spoke publicly about bitterness toward Simon. She understood the mechanics of the industry well enough to know that he was one part of a much larger system. But his absence during her most difficult years was telling. She had been managed as a product rather than nurtured as a young artist, and that distinction made all the difference. Slowly, quietly, she began to rebuild. She started working with independent producers, and a pivotal turning point came through her collaboration with Grammy-winning producer Kevin Bowe, known for his work with Etta James and Joe Cocker. With Bowe, Courtney found the creative freedom she had been searching for. No top-down deadlines. No molds to fill. Just honest songwriting rooted in real experience. By 2025, Courtney Hadwin had fully re-emerged, not as the viral teenager the world once knew, but as a grounded, independent artist with something genuine and powerful to say. Working with Kevin Bowe, she wrote and recorded songs that carried real emotional weight: Monsters, You Only Love Me When I Lie, Breakable, and That Girl Don't Live Here, each exploring themes of vulnerability, anger, resilience, and identity with a depth that her early label work had never allowed. Her single, You Only Love Me When I Lie, was hailed by critics as a raw blues soul anthem, her most emotionally powerful work yet. A stripped-down, mic-less video performance left viewers breathless. Journalists wrote that she sounded like thunder, and praised her intensity and authenticity in equal measure. Her debut album, Little Miss Jagged, set for release in September 2025, has been called her boldest and most personal project to date. Now 20 years old, Courtney has spoken openly about the emotional toll of her early fame, the burnout, the loss of control, the pressure to perform before she was truly ready. She has described the experience of reclaiming her voice as reclaiming her strength, and that journey is reflected in every song she now releases. A landmark moment came in April 2024, when she was hand-picked by legendary music executive Clive Davis to open a gala at Carnegie Hall, performing a Janis Joplin tribute in front of some of the most respected figures in the music industry. It was widely celebrated as a sign of the deep artistic respect she had earned through years of quiet, determined work. Back home in County Durham, Courtney lives a life rooted in creativity and authenticity. She maintains over 1 million followers across social media platforms, sharing studio snippets, candid conversations about mental health, and everyday moments from her life with refreshing honesty. With new management under Total Artist Management, she is booking shows across the UK and Europe and planning US tour dates. Every step forward is taken on her own terms. Courtney Hadwin's story is ultimately not a cautionary tale about the dangers of fame, though those dangers are real and her experience with them was genuine. It is a story about what happens when talent, resilience, and self-knowledge outlast the machinery that tried to shape them. She was a lion at 13. At 20, she is something even more powerful, an artist who knows exactly who she is.